many years, water has been taken for granted and abused, partly due to the notion that water is a renewable resource. And the periods of good rains experienced in most parts make people forget how vulnerable we can be without water. The Central Area of Namibia is affected by drought, as is the rest of the country, with the difference being that it caters to the city of Windhoek, where most urban Namibians live, sharing very dire and limited supply of potable or drinkable water. Windhoek residents drink from the waters of the Amaruru, Swakopmund and Vonbach dams. Due to a lack of rainfall and proper national planning, these dams have essentially run dry. A very small percentage of our water comes from boreholes that pump ancient water from deep underground. The remaining percentile of our water comes from recycled resources such as sewage. Most of this portable water is processed directly at the Goriangap reclamation plant. These resources combined will not be enough to cater for the needs of the city, and Windhoek is in serious danger. The water crisis which Windhoek faces was announced to the public in October 2015. However, the looming crisis was foretold in numerous research papers since as early as 1994, a whole 2 decades ago. Critics suggest that the water crisis could have been managed effectively if it had been addressed in time by the state. The immediate future of continued water supply to the residents of the city falls in the hands of the municipality. We speak to Manager of Corporate Communications, Mr. Joshua Amukugo from City of Windhoek tonight on One Exclusive. Good evening, viewers, and welcome to One Exclusive. Tonight we have Mr. Amukugo, the Manager of Corporate Communications from City of Windhoek, and we are going to talk about the water crisis in particularly affecting the Central Area of Namibia and Windhoek. We all know the crisis was announced or made public in October. Now it's been about 7 months since then, and I think just for the viewers out there who aren't watching the news or reading the newspapers, what is the magnitude of the crisis that Windhoek in particular is facing?
The crisis is actually not to be overestimated now, and we are really entering a danger zone, so to say, because even the main suppliers to the city of Windhoek is also not very much comfortable with the situation as is. The 3 dams we normally get water from, that is now the Omatako port, which is now standing at 0%. Sure. And we are having the Swakop port. That one is around 6-7% full. And the Vonbach, that is even less than 20% full.
So we've got these 3 surface dams that we get most of our water from,
that's
the Central
exactly,
Area of Namibia.
Exactly.
But there are a few other places that we get a bit of water from, the aquifers and the boreholes.
In fact, for the city of Windhoek, we have some boreholes of our own, and they were in the range of 50 that have been, but because of the situation, we decided to increase on the number of them. So soon and very soon, we will be adding around 9 of them.
Okay.
And on top of that, again, we do have a reclamation plant that is also that is actually under almost renovation, one could say. Right. Actually, what we are trying to do is to upgrade it, not to renovate it, but to upgrade it. That is what we are.
Because, I mean, as far as I know, the Goriangap reclamation plant goes back as far as 1968, I think it was built.
Exactly.
And then in 2000, it was worked on and upgraded, and now you guys are doing that
We still have
again.
to do it for the 3rd time again.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. And now we're touching a bit on the next thing. Now, for those of us who don't know, you are managing the water supply, but the water that you are getting is from NamWater. Describe that relationship a little bit.
In fact, local authorities are subsidiaries of the central government. And NamWater is also another government entity. So it is upon government instruction and the regulations that NamWater was given the responsibility of supplying local authorities with water. All right. So that's why all local authorities have to be buying water from NamWater.
Okay, fantastic.
That is actually the cooperation we are having, which has been doing well so far.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. But now I think the next obvious question is water demand management. Now this is a term that was really coined in 1994 when we faced our last big drought. And there's, I think, a 350-page document drawn up by the minister and a water engineer by the name Ben van der Merwe. And they put a lot of things in there that really predict what we're standing with, the crisis we're standing with now. One of the predictions was that then, within 10 or 15 years, we wouldn't have water. Now it's been 10 or 15 years since then, and we're stuck with this problem. Tell us about water demand management.
In fact, the situation has been like that. It's true, like what you're saying. And there seems to have been an oversight from some sectors because we seem to have been downplaying the seriousness of the situation.
And it's also difficult. There's so many role players.
There are so many role players, and for us in the central area, there is not much we can do. We cannot do away with the water to get them from Namwater, definitely not, because there is no any other source. But discussions are undergoing, they are ongoing with the Namwater, plus the government, plus the City of Windhoek. And as you know, recently, Cabinet announced a committee that is to be spearheading that process of securing water for the central region particularly, and for the rest of the nation.
Water demand management was the strategy drafted in 1994 during our last big drought by various stakeholders including ministers, engineers and parastatal employees who foretold the dangers we face with regards to water shortages today. One report in particular drafted by the state contains 200 pages of research suggesting various ways in which water demand should be moderated to ensure supply for future generations in the city. Today, 20 years later, we ask why these recommendations were not fully executed. With the City of Windhoek facing a debt-to-state of almost $500 million Namibian dollars, public sentiment grows that the municipality suffers from gross mismanagement and has neglected its duty to provide and maintain legitimate infrastructure for urban water supply. On the other hand, to the man on the street, it is obvious that Windhoek residents are not taking their responsibility to save water and therefore the city in any serious light. Upper-income residents can still be seen watering their lawns and filling their pools. Lower-income suburbs are still bustling with car washes on every street corner. After the break, we sum up the fate of the city's water supply with Mr. Joshua Amukugo from the City of Windhoek. We've had national elections, ministers have been shuffled around, new ministers have been appointed. So that plan that was put in place 20 years ago obviously hasn't been implemented to the extent that it should have been implemented. But there are various ways that we can buffer it now. My next question is, I think there are two specific things that they mentioned. The first one is market intervention, pushing up tariffs. You know, especially people who use a lot of water, that they end up paying more for that. Exactly. And then the other one would be direct intervention, making sure that taps don't leak, that companies get water audits. And I think that's also why the public's a little bit concerned, because honestly, as a journalist, if you drive around, you still see car washes open, people filling their swimming pools. My question to you is, City of Windhoek doing enough to curb people from wasting water?
In fact, the city is trying its level best. We are doing our best to make sure that people are not wasting water, the water that is there. As you know, we have already put a moratorium on the swimming pools, point number one.
Yes.
Nobody shall be allowed to be filling up a swimming pool. And if it is full of water, you better cover it. And then we went out with the community awareness campaigns, going to schools out there, preparing pamphlets and brochures, distributing them amongst the residents, just to make the people aware of the seriousness of the situation.
Definitely.
So those are the things we are having. And regarding the car washes, there are some measures we have been trying to put in place.
Yes.
Although some of them are actually too punitive and need to be gazetted. And we'll soon and very soon get there. But now what we are able to implement is actually to force the car washers to make use of the bucket rather than the hose pipe.
So instead of losing your livelihood, find a different way of handling it.
Exactly, exactly. And we have put a punitive measure aimed at those households that will end up using more than 40,000 cubic meters of water
a month. And I mean, where I live in Avis, Klein Windhoek, Eros, you know, the higher income areas, it really doesn't seem like people are grasping. You know, I still see people watering their lawns and stuff like that. Are you guys going to take such extreme measures where you actually enforce the law, send police officers or, you know, water officers to these homes? I think that's really the next question, yeah.
Yeah, these are actually the people that are not aware of the fact that the luxury they are trying to maintain now, nature might end up forcing them to maintain very soon and very soon. It's no use boasting that you are able to pay your monthly account. You don't care how much it might be because you do have money. That's not the solution. What we are saying is, if you are not taking care of the situation for now, nature will force you to abandon those luxuries you are saying you are saving for now.
No, definitely. So I think there's a big shift that needs to happen. What really is the priority for us as a nation, and that it's all of our responsibility, regardless of the last 20 years and what might or might not have happened. Now let's just quickly touch on Harambee and economic growth. There are a lot of big plans for our nation and our country. A big part of that is infrastructure and construction, building government buildings, schools, businesses. And I think there are hundreds of building plans that have already, you know, been approved by City of Windhoek. So you guys are sitting in a very difficult position. You know, the country has to develop, but there's a water shortage.
Exactly.
What now?
No, development and construction are inseparable. You cannot separate the two. Construction seems to be around actually to stay and never to go. What we need to do and what we have started doing is actually just still instilling and creating awareness amongst the developers. Not only the developers themselves, but also for them to extend awareness to the workers so that they cannot leave the hose pipes running while they are not in use, etc., etc. And further, we were also saying it's high time that us Namibians, particularly in our central area, start considering the use of construction materials that are not water intensive. So we should start thinking around all those things. And that's the only way to stop, actually. But all in all is maybe the situation whereby Windhoek was caught unprepared by the situation. If we remember well, in 1990, there were less than 100,000 Namibians in the city. But now the city has grown by more than half, more than a third actually. Because if we were in the range of 80,000 by 1990, but now we are approaching 500,000, it's actually a huge jump. Nobody was ever prepared.
I think on the one side, you know, you are speaking for your institution. Were we prepared or weren't we prepared? If you do look at the resources that are available to the public, this crisis should have been mitigated earlier. But as we've discussed, there are a lot of shareholders that, you know, play their role. On top of that, there are people who aren't paying their municipal bills. I think City of Windhoek is in debt of over 300 million.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of that is people who really aren't taking this seriously. Exactly. So tell us about that, about the debt that you're facing.
That situation is actually just taking us backwards instead of moving forward. What we are saying, the way the local authorities operate is such that they provide services to you before you start paying. Then you come in starting to pay after the services are ready for you. So the money you are paying is just enabling the local authority, the municipality, to go and extend the same services to the next people in the city. Now, if you are failing to pay and services was provided to you, you are actually punishing the next person or telling him or her, don't get the services I'm getting now. Because I got the services, I won't pay so that the city can be able to extend the same services to you. Yes. So that's actually the story you are telling.
Yeah.
And it is really a very, very bad example to emulate. The best is actually to be updated with paying municipal bills.
And I think then obviously apologize, I do have to ask you this as well.
Right.
City of Windhoek, it has been inundated with corruption, people getting salary increases and bonuses, you know, when we were in a water crisis. So I think the public also wants to know there's a 15% tariff increase across the board looming for us. How do we know that the monies we are paying for this water crisis to get it better is actually going to where it should be going?
In fact, the city, like any other institution, is just operating in a framework of moving forward. But when it comes to this, let me speak on behalf of the city, when it comes to water tariffs, electricity tariffs, that is really something, the increment thereon is something we cannot avoid. Every time we increase on water, it is in response to NamWater having increased their tariffs because we buy water from them. They increase their tariffs. In return, we also try to...
So you have to mitigate those
exactly,
costs.
that's how we go about. And the same applies to NamWater, to NamPower. There is no way, there is not a date that the city increased the tariffs, the electricity tariffs, before NamPower has announced how much they are going to increase. Yeah.
Makes sense.
So it's just to recover the cost, nothing else.
All right.
And really there is no ripping off of anybody.
And I think it's also one of the things that was proposed is the market incentive, you know, that you have to get to people through their pockets sometimes.
Exactly. That's great.
So let's just quickly move on to the use of grey water. Now, I know there are a lot of people who want to feed their gardens with water from the toilet or from the bath. There's a very ambiguousness about the rules. What am I allowed to do and what am I not allowed to do? Are we allowed to use grey water or aren't we?
As for now, we aren't.
Right.
In fact, there is one position I regret. For the past 5 years now, we have lost the status of being the cleanest city in Africa. And we lost out to Kigali. And for the city to qualify being the cleanest city, a lot of factors are looked at. And the hygiene is one of the most important points on the calendar of qualifications. Okay. So if we are to allow anybody to use grey water, the hygiene in the city will definitely never allow us to qualify for being one of the cleanest cities. And being a cleanest city means each and every second person the world over shall be wanting to come to your city, either for holidaying, honeymooning, etc., etc. Yeah. And that is money coming to the country. And once you are declared unhygienic, nobody will want to be associated with you. So the income to your country is approaching zero.
But I mean, okay, grey water is something, and we're still hoping, God hopes it rains sometime soon. The next thing I want to ask you is catching rainwater. Now, that's also not really allowed in urban spaces, is it?
Equally not for now. It is, but we are working on the modalities of eventually allowing people to go that route. Okay. But I think it will be attached to a number of restrictions and conditions, etc., etc.
Namibia's economy is growing rapidly. The newly proposed Harambee Prosperity Plan will ensure export-led growth, speeding up Namibia's industrialization process. Construction is a key player in ensuring this growth. Building is not only a necessity for our economic growth, but it is essential for the social well-being of Windhoek residents. Civil society has recently been placing continued pressure on government to supply affordable housing to Windhoek residents. And building these houses costs the city of Windhoek a lot of water. The water crisis puts the jobs of 400,000 construction workers at risk. How will the parastatal handle the growing pressure to develop infrastructure without unnecessary burden on water supply? Despite the immediate threats, the city and NamWater also need to decide on long-term solutions. We speak to Mr. Amukugo about the only two options on the table: the costly process of desalinating seawater, or the troublesome route of carrying water from the Okavango River, which feeds both Angola and Botswana. Now, it's not like the Ministry and City of Windhoek, even NamWater, haven't been doing nothing. Windhoek aquifers have been upgraded, dual pipelines have been laid. There was an emergency scheme in 1996 where they tried to transport water from the Kuvele area, from the Okavango River down to City of Windhoek, but the project was abandoned. Now, if you look at the recent reports by the Ministry, it looks like long-term wise, we've only got two options. We've got the option of desalinating water, or then, again trying that emergency scheme to bring the water down from the Okavango River. Tell us about these options.
Those options are still on the table. Desalinating would actually be a very, very expensive exercise. Considering the fact that the Windhoek is almost 2 kilometers above sea level, and for you to be pumping water from the ocean upwards, it will be needing the machineries with a power that is matched by nobody.
So the desalination is not the problem, it's the transport.
The whole project will be a very, very expensive one. But fortunately, with the commitment we are getting from our central government, that might eventually be the route to go. Yeah, because there will be security at the end of the day, security of water provision, because the ocean shall never run out of water. Okavango River is actually just about 250 kilometers from where the water pipes to the central region start. So it is even closer, but it's actually infested with a lot of protocols to follow. Because of the surrounding or neighboring countries. Botswana needs to be consulted, Angola needs to be consulted, Zambia needs. So protocol-wise, it is really not an easy task to embark on, but it's also not written off.
Okay, and I mean the hydropolitics of that area alone, during our struggle for independence, the pipelines were bombed. There's always been a little bit of strife between Angola. Whose waters are they really?
Exactly.
And it's the same thing with the Orange River. Yeah. So we do have these large rivers, Zambezi, Okavango, but there are definitely regional politics involved.
And they are really doing they are not making things easier for us, definitely. But with the diplomacy our countries, particularly our government, is endowed with, there is no need to panic, actually. Okay. If we are to eventually decide to get water from the Kavango, I am convinced
we'll make a plan.
Our government will succeed.
And these two things that we've mentioned now that really are the most viable options, they're long-term solutions. It's going to take us 10 years to get there. So until then, we have to save 30% of water. How are we going to do that?
Actually, for now, let's make it 40.
40%?
40%, definitely.
Sure. All right.
We are having people that are so disciplined and they heed to the call. But we are still having people that just play everything down, and they are not interested in hearing that we are about to run out of water. And that is a risky undertaking, and we really need to all become very serious with the situation.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, sir, for your time. There you have it, viewers. That's all from us at One Exclusive this evening. It's crunch time. We need to save 40% water usage. So let's step up to the game. If you have any comments on the story, SMS us at 555.